Hey everyone. Welcome back to Animeverse Fanfics, where your favorite anime characters step into brand new adventures. We bring stories to life with voice, animation, and a whole lot of imagination. Last time we didn't get to finish chapter 7 of Another Me I Haven't Met, but that changes right now. Let's jump straight in and see what happens next. Chapter 7, Friends and Fights, Day 2. The sun began to lower itself down underneath the soft pillows spread across the horizon as the moon rose, preparing to watch over the village in the sun's absence. Boru watched all of this happen, allowing his eyes and body to rest as his mind scrambled. It was nights like these when Boru felt most like a child, for it was nights like these when the twins would once sneak into their parents' bedroom. Snuggling up to their parents as he watched the sunset through the floor-to-ceiling windows in their parents' bedroom, dozing off while either Mama or Papa idly played with his hair, his twin's hand in his. But they weren't home right now. In fact, they were further away from home than they had ever been before. Boru hated it. It was the one thing about being a ninja that he truly couldn't stand. Being away from his family, the people he loved most. He had his twin, of course he did. His twin being by his side was the one thing that he could always count on. Born together, lived together, die together. That was a pact they made as kids, one of the few that held strong to this day. But Boru's family was far more than just Menma, and he missed it. He felt tears prickling at the corners of his eyes and forced himself to think about his current situation. He would be back home with his family soon enough. We need to come up with a plan for tomorrow. Menma turned to face Boru, expression confused. He had been trying very hard to ignore his twins sniffling to give him a bit of space, and the conversation starter came a little out of the blue. What do you mean? Boru rolled his eyes. Why did his twin have to be so stupid? Alas, he elaborated. We'll be sparring tomorrow, he said, emphasizing the sparring part as if that would help Menma get it. And we have the Sharingan. You know, the red swirly thing in our eyes that only Uchihas have. And Menma got it, mentally face-palming for taking years to get there. Right. Would be a bit weird if they figured out that we had it. Exactly. We need to decide how we'll go about keeping it a secret. Menma frowned, considering this. I mean, we could always just not use it. Boru glowered and Menma let out a very attractive snort. That would weaken us and put us more at risk. Meaning you don't want to lose. Boru glared at his twin, wishing he could set him on fire as said twin held his breath in an attempt to smother down his laughter. It's more than just that. Is it though? Obviously. Menma finally broke, wheezing at Boru's pouting face, but mentally conceded. After all, his twin wasn't the only competitive one. What if we could use our Sharingan without anyone noticing? Menma offered, once he was able to breathe again, ignoring the scathing glare coming from Boru's general direction. If you think that we won't be under heavy scrutiny from Naruto and at least 3 other jounin, then you're more stupid than I thought. Menma glared. Obviously I knew that BSTRD. I'm just saying that maybe we could henge ourselves or something. That made Boru pause, finally dropping the glare. That could actually work. Menma beamed. Told you I wasn't stupid. Shut up, I said could. We'll need to be careful to only cast the henge over our eyes and only have it on when our Sharingan is active, to make it less noticeable. But even then, if someone looks at us with a Sharingan or Byakugan, then we're busted, and if we screw up our facial features even a little, then we're double busted. Menma shrugged, looking mostly unbothered. We've pulled off harder stunts. Plus, the only person from here with a Byakugan is Niji's kid and Hima, and I really doubt that Papa would have been able to have a kid with someone who isn't Mama. Both twins nodded at this. The only person that Papa really enjoyed spending time with was Mama. Even his friends, even though they were more Mama's friends, drained him emotionally. Neither could fathom Papa being able to deal with anyone else long enough to procreate and then raise the child. Also, Papa was completely and utterly down bad for Mama. Also, we could always just spend a few minutes memorizing our features with the Sharingan, so messing it up shouldn't be a problem. Menma added. Nodding his head, Boru finished off the plan. We should be alright with chakra as well, considering we got Mama's endless chakra. So long as we don't spar too many times, we should be alright. With that, the twins finished getting ready for bed and studied their faces in the mirror before heading to bed. They were going to need all the rest they could get. The next morning began with an early breakfast, a grumbling Boruto, when he realized the twins were coming, and an exasperated Naruto. The group were currently on their way to the training fields, just past the outskirts of the village in the forest that acted as a barrier from main village and the areas built for ninja to train and strengthen their skills. It was forests like these that earned the village its name, because they were grown by Senju Hashirama himself and because of their beauty. Menma couldn't help but breathe out all of the tension in his body with a drawn-out sigh as he admired the forest they were walking through. The chirping of the birds and the sunlight sprinkled along the path made for a perfect and serene environment. But they were here on a mission and had to focus on their companions' Minders. Menma shared a look with his twin and got a discreet nod in return. They might as well try to get whatever information they could. Naruto? Boru asked tentatively. It still felt so wrong addressing a version of Mama by their name. Yes, Boru. Who's going to be there? Naruto paused before adopting a more thoughtful expression. I'm not entirely sure. This is more of an optional event, so it really just depends on who wants the extra training. After a beat he added, Boruto would probably know more than me. Both twins turned their attention to Boruto, who scowled at all of them. But after Naruto gave him a stern look, he huffed and mumbled out their answer. If I had to guess, Samaire, Metal Lee, Nara, Yamanaka, Akimichi, Mitsuki, and of course Uchiha. Both twins froze, turning to look at each other with wide eyes. The Uzumakis also stopped, looking at them in confusion. Boru turned back to his other self, feeling a bit like he couldn't breathe, and asked, Uchiha? Yeah, Uchiha Sarada. The twins froze again. Sarada. But then if not Mama, then who? It was a while before Menma was able to stutter out a question. Who is her mother? Naruto frowned in concern. Sakura. Sakura Haruno. Why? Before Boru could do anything to stop him, Menma had already opened his stupid mouth. Isn't Auntie Sakura a lesbian? Author's note. I am well aware that Sakura is not a lesbian, but the twins grew up in a world where she only ever had eyes for her wife, so they just assumed. Also drama. Naruto and Boruto looked stunned for a moment, gaping like fish. Boruto seemed to gain his composure before his father. What the hell is that supposed to mean? Before Boruto could turn this into a screaming match and gain the attention of the whole village, Naruto put a hand over his mouth and ended the conversation. We'll talk more about that later. For now we should just get to the training grounds and focus on training for the time being. All the kids nodded, even if Boruto looked like he wanted to start yelling at his father instead. The rest of the walk passed. In near silence, the only exception to that were the twins whispering to each other, being careful not to allow anyone else to hear them. They could see that it was starting to bother Naruto. It had been bugging Boruto for a while already, but the twins didn't much care about him. When they got to the training grounds, Boruto immediately broke off to go to his friends. The twins were about to follow when they were stopped by Naruto and guided to a shaded area where some adults were conversing quietly, though all conversation halted when they arrived. In the group, the twins could recognize Konohamaru and Hanabi. But the other two's identities weren't very hard to discern. One of them looked identical to Uncle Shikamaru, with the exception of that horrific goatee. Seriously, it made him look so old. Boru heard Menma muffle a snort to his left and smirked, knowing that his twin was thinking the same thing. The last adult was also pretty easy to guess. You don't see that shade of pink hair often. Auntie Sakura. Her hair was much too short, but it was definitely her. The twins shared a mournful look. She was probably one of the last people they wanted to see right now. Why did the sage hate them? Naruto approached and greeted each of them warmly, with a hug in the case of Sakura and Konohamaru. As the attention of the adults shifted to the twins, Naruto introduced them. These two are the kids from the other dimension that I told you about. The blonde one is Boruto, we just call him Boru, and the one with black hair is Menma. Naruto explained as he gestured to each of them respectfully. Menma gave an enthusiastic hi. In return, while Boruto just settled for a wave. The adult returned their own greetings and Naruto picked up the conversation again. Konohamaru and Hanabi are here to supervise and will be looking over the spars and giving corrections. It's technically Sakura's day off, but she volunteered to be our medic, should things get a little rough. And Shikamaru and I are just here to spectate. The twins nodded in understanding, then turned their attention to Konohamaru as he spoke up. As I understand it, both of you are 16. With confirmations from both kids, he continued. Should I assume that you have also been trained from quite a young age? Both twins once again agreed, distantly aware of the singular focus Shikamaru was regarding them with. Wonderful. That means I don't have to worry about you two getting your asses kicked. However, you may or may not know that both of you are a good 2 years older than everyone else. So, please be mindful of the fact that they may not be as advanced as you. We have no interest in killing one of the babies, don't worry. Menma chirped back, lightening the mood. Konohamaru smiled at them. Well, I think that covers just about everything. Not quite. Hanabi butted in politely, nodding at Konohamaru slightly as he moved aside to give her the stage. It is quite obvious that we know basically nothing about the two of you, I just wanted to ask if there are any clan jutsus, bloodline abilities or anything like that we should know about." The twins shared a glance. Boru, taking the lead, answered for the both of them. "No. Just plain old Uzumakis, unless you want details on our chakra pools." That earned them an indignant "hey" from Naruto's general area, which gained a variety of amused sounds from those gathered. "Well then," Hanabi continued with a smile, "you two can make your way over to the others and get introductions out of the way while we figure out which pairs we want to see spar." Both twins nodded and took their leave, making their way over to where the genin were standing. Konohamaru, Shika. Both men gave their Hokage their full attention, while keeping their bodies in the same position as before, acting as if a conversation wasn't taking place. "What's up?" Konohamaru replied quietly, matching Naruto's volume, and keeping the movement of his mouth to a minimum. "Keep an eye on the twins, it might just be me being paranoid, but I can't shake the feeling that they're hiding something." "Anything in particular?" Shika pressed. Naruto shook his head minutely. "Possible trauma, but it feels like there is a lot more." Konohamaru frowned and nodded before rejoining a conversation with Hanabi regarding the pairs. The only sign of recognition Shika gave was a vaguely surprised look. Naruto sighed. Hopefully today went smoothly. As the twins approached the group, the conversations drew to an abrupt halt. All the genin staring at the twins with varying degrees of wariness, shock, and curiosity. The twins took advantage of the pause and surveyed them, learning what they could from their appearance. Shikadai, Inajin and Chaochu weren't exactly a surprise. They were just younger versions of the Ino Shikacho from their universe, so it was fair to assume, in Menma's humble opinion, that they had the same parents in both universes. Thank Kami. There were only so many surprises the twins could deal with from this strange universe. Mitsuki was the exact same, which is something that Boru took great comfort in. Menma just found it weird and kind of creepy, but whatever. Samaya was here too. Both twins were a little taken aback by that. They knew who she was part of their graduating class after all. But she had never really been that close to anyone in the group. Though the twins saw that there were several people that were missing in comparison to the twins' universe, so Boru just figured it was the universe's way of filling in the gaps. Metal Lee was mostly the same apart from one small but extremely important detail. The hair clip that his dad, Gaara, gave him is gone. Typically this is detail that is too insignificant for the twins to notice, but both twins could remember 2 weeks after the Chunin exams when he had lost the clip and went into no fewer than 5 panic attacks before he, and the team dedicated to helping him, found it. It was the reason that no one touched the clip. They even made sure that their attacks during sparring didn't get anywhere close to it. Everyone knew how important that clip was to Lee. But what did its absence mean? Did it mean that Lee also has different parents here? What if he had to grow up an orphan like Boru knew his pops, Rock Lee, did? Metal Lee squirmed uncomfortably under Boru's stare, so he shelved those thoughts and moved on to the others present. The twins breezed over Boruto and landed on the one person they were dreading to acknowledge, Sarada. Their adorable, gorgeous, and scarily intelligent little sister, who wasn't even their sister here. She looked different. Her hair was far too short. Their sister had always prided herself on having hair as long and appealing as Mama's, but this Sarada didn't. She had glasses too, weird, but the twins could get over that. The thing that the twins couldn't get over, the thing that made both of their hearts ache, was the lack of recognition in her eyes. The blatant distrust present in every tense muscle that made her. That's what undoubtedly hurt the worst. The silence dragged on a bit longer. It was making everyone pretty uncomfortable by this point, but no one quite knew how to break it. Then Chaochu broke it. "Daemon, if Boruto is going to look like that one day, then we should keep him around," she said playfully, jokingly looking Boru up and down. The remaining tension dissipated at the sound at everyone's chuckles, Boruto letting out an indignant, "Hey." Once the chuckles died down a bit, Inajin spoke up. "If you don't mind, could you maybe introduce yourselves? Those of us not in Team 7 don't really know what's going on." The others in the group nodded while Team 7 just looked a little sheepish, bar Mitsuki. Menma just grinned. "Well, I'm Menma Uchimaki," he said with a small wave, "and this is my far less hot twin, Boruto Uchimaki." Menma flinched as Boru's hand met the back of his head. "Uchimaki?" asked Shikadai with a calculating look that really did look a lot like his father's. The twins shared a nervous glance. Menma went to answer, but Boru stomped quite violently on his foot to shut him up, earning a few shocked looks from those present. "Yes, it's the shortened version of our surname. The full one is very long, so saying it that way is easier." Boru answered calmly, smacking Menma's hand away when he tried to tickle Boru's side. "What is it short for?" Shikadai pressed further with an innocent-looking tilt of his head. Boru decided that he was a little SHT. He also had a sudden sympathy for the people who are regularly on the receiving end of this passive interrogation. This time Boru let Menma speak. If anyone had the people skills to get them out of this corner, it was Menma. Where's the fun in that? The whole point of being in a new situation is figuring out how it works. It wouldn't be fair if we just told you everything. Chirped Menma with a smile so bright that it rivaled the sun. Shikadai and a few others now looked extremely suspicious. But thankfully, the twins were saved by Hanabi and Konohamaru arriving and announcing the sparring pairs for the afternoon. 1. Sumire vs Inogen 2. Mitsuki vs Metal Lee 3. Chaochu vs Shikadai 4. Sarada vs Boru 5. Boruto vs Menma. The twins shared another long-suffering look. Why did the sage hate them? Menma watched as Sumire and Inogen battled it out. It was quite interesting to see how Inogen's fighting style had improved over the years without him really noticing. But now, looking at what he was currently capable of, it was easy to find the differences between the two. This Inogen was far too slow and not as flexible as Menma knew he would grow to be. He also had a bit of a problem with overextending his attacks. Though Menma thought it was a standard problem Genin dealt with as a result of being taught by Jounin, who typically had much longer limbs. Sumire was someone who Menma couldn't give much of an opinion on. The last time he had seen her counterpart fight was over a year ago, so the details were fuzzy. But he was quite impressed with her speed and tail jutsu, because it was DMN good for a 12-year-old. The match ended quite quickly with a win to Inogen. He had gotten lucky with a kick to her abdomen that sent her back a couple feet. When she had steadied herself and looked back at him, he had caught her with the Yamanaka Mind Body SWCH technique. Sneaky Bizardi had sent out his consciousness the second that Sumire pushed back, so that by the time she gained her bearings and looked up, it would already be too late. The second match between Mitsuki and Metal Lee took a bit longer. Mitsuki was undoubtedly an absolute powerhouse, but Lee's speed and brute strength was nothing to scoff at. Menma had been quite confident that Mitsuki would take the match, but Lee was able to hide himself in some of the vegetation, and due to his lack of chakra, Mitsuki had trouble using his sensor abilities to find him. When Mitsuki had turned his back to look for him in the other direction, Lee had bolted silently from his hiding place and ended it with a swift kick to the back of Mitsuki's neck, knocking him out. Shikadai and Chaochu were up next. Chaochu had started off strong, enlarging her hand and basically using it as an oversized fly swatter, the poor fly in question being Shikadai, who was forced to duck and dive in every direction to avoid being squashed. The Nara, however, was able to lure her into the shade of a nearby tree and spent the next 2 minutes slowly inching his shadows towards her, being subtle enough to not be noticed until she was caught. After she had been trapped, she was forced to just stand with her enlarged hand raised above her head, flinging hilarious jibes at Shikadai until she was forced to tap out because she was running out of chakra. Which meant that it was now time for Boru to face Sarada. Boru did his best to keep his breathing level as his and Sarada's name was called out. He could feel the anxiety pooling in his stomach and weighing down his chest. Why did he have to fight his sister? What if their Hengis don't work? What if they are caught using their Sharingan? Menma shuffled a bit closer from where he was seated to Boru's right and let his head fall on his twin's shoulder, keeping the action deliberately casual, lest someone notice how much his twin was panicking. Boru's chest lightened minutely. Kami, he loves that idiot. What do you think I should expect? Boru practically murmured, as to not be heard by the Jounins that had very obviously moved closer to where the fight would be taking place. Spectating my butt. Sakura's kid. Probably has less chakra. More control though. Menma returned, keeping it short and sweet. Boru sighed and stood, lazily making his way towards where Sarada and Konohamaru were waiting for him, doing his best to hide how nervous he truly was. As he came to stand in front of this Sarada, he realized with a start that she would be using her Sharingan during the fight. The bundle of nerves settled back into his stomach and caused an intense nausea to blossom from his midsection. How could he have not remembered this before? His mind scrambled to find some way to overcome the newly presented obstacle. Boru started listing the facts in his head, desperate to find some sort of loophole that he could exploit. Okay, the original plan was to place a henge over their Sharingan to hide it. This work won't work in front of a Byakugan or Sharingan user. Why? Because they can see chakra and will know that a henge is being cast, even see through it in the case of a Byakugan user. And wait, they can see chakra. That's why it won't work. And all Boru needed to keep secret was his eyes. He could cast a henge over his whole body. Either that or let small bits of chakra leak out all over the place. It would be draining, extremely draining. But all he needed to do was win this spar, and this version of Sarada probably had 1/10 of the chakra he had. So long as he didn't lose too much, he could probably outlast her. Probably. But this was worth it. She'll be so focused on the chakra all over him that she won't notice that the layer on his eyes is slightly different. There is the possibility that she could mention it to someone, however it is more likely that she would just assume that he has awful chakra control and leave it at that. Boru took a deep breath, trying to settle the churning in his gut. It will be fine. Everything will be fine. He tuned back into the mini-speech Konohamaru had been giving to the two of them. And I want a nice and clean fight. This is only a spar. Don't forget that. The Jounin finished with a pointed look at Boru, which he didn't think he deserved. With that he started walking back towards the others assembled, giving Sarada and Boru the space they would definitely need. Konohamaru faced them once more and began counting down. Begin in 3, Sarada's legs bent slightly. 2, Boru cast the henge over his body. 1, both took a deep breath. Geo. Sarada and Boru both activated their Sharingan, even though only one was visible, and Sarada leaped into the air, hands flying through the seals for the classic fireball jutsu. Boru saw it coming, almost in slow motion, and just after she released the fire, he had done a few seals of his own before placing his hands on the ground and inserting a bit of his chakra, making a wall of earth rise to shield him from the fire. The second the wall was up, he dashed to the side and turned around to see Yup. Sarada was coming at him with an impossible speed, Chidori crackling in her right hand. Before he could really think about it, Boru was already pushing chakra into his hand and channeling some air from around them. Pushing said air into Sarada's midsection and sending her hurtling backwards, just in time to avoid a hand going through his left lung. He figured that she was probably only being so risky because they had the best medic in all of the elemental nations here on standby to step in and treat any life-threatening injuries. Sarada looked at him in shock. Boru didn't really have the time to think about why before she was gearing up for another attack. With his Sharingan, Boru saw her channel chakra into her legs before launching herself at him, raising her fist to take him out with brute strength. He used his chakra to form the air between them into a shield. Her fist met the air and stopped, the energy causing a small shock wave to explode from the point of impact. Both of them skidded backwards. The second Boru recovered, he was blocking a blow to his chest. More blows were traded and it turned into a tail-jutsu standoff. Boru found himself being quite impressed by the skill she was showing. Sure, she wasn't nearly as good as his sister, but she was clearly a prodigy in her own right. The punches and kicks kept coming from both sides, getting faster and faster. Boru was holding back a bit, of course he was, but for a 12-year-old Sarada was very good and he wasn't pulling his punches nearly as much as he was expecting to. This continued until they were face to face. Boru looked in her eye and felt confusion overwhelm him for a second. The same familiar kind of disorientation that came with being under a genjutsu. A pretty dang powerful one too. But his training kicked in and Boru dispelled the genjutsu on instinct. Sarada's eyes once again widened, and he took advantage of her momentary shock to send a chakra-fueled kick to her gut. Not strong enough to break ribs but strong enough to be really painful. Once again sending her hurtling back. Boru stood back and waited for Sarada to be on her feet again, usually a very stupid move. One typically didn't give their opponent time to recover if they liked their lives. But Boru had a plan. The Uchimaki siblings had found out pretty quickly that when one uses their Sharingan to copy the seals for a jutsu, they can't consider nor predict the amount of chakra needed for said jutsu unless they are familiar with it. Papa had looked very impressed when they, Menma, Boru and Sarada, had shared what they had learned because he hadn't known it. Mostly because he didn't copy hand signs often, if ever, and partly because he didn't receive proper Sharingan training due to the Uchiha massacre. For these reasons, Boru thought that it was likely that Sarada wouldn't know this. And he could also see that she was getting pretty low on chakra. Boru made sure that he had just enough to do the jutsu and keep up his full body henge and Sharingan, also checking that he had a bit of chakra left over, in case this didn't end the fight. Boru smirked at her from across the field, and she narrowed her eyes in response. Got her. Boru started running towards her. She did the same. He raised his hands. She did the same. He did the hand signs for an Earth-style Raisin Shuriken. Boru wasn't entirely sure if this would work. Raisin Shuriken was pretty well known as his mama's jutsu, but the hand signs aren't as common knowledge. And since this Sarada wasn't Naruto's child, it's likely that she wouldn't have seen it, never mind have the time to memorize it. Also, Earth-style was her weakest affinity. Sarada did the hand signs for the Earth-style Raisin Shuriken. Just as Boru felt a small Raisin Shuriken form in his hand, he saw as Sarada went white as a sheet, before her eyes rolled back and she collapsed. He let the Raisin Shuriken die out. He'd won. Boru deactivated his Sharingan and let his henge fall as he watched Sakura rush to Sarada's aid. He felt a small spike of chakra behind him and turned to see Naruto regarding him with a pinched expression. He tilted his head to let the adult know he was listening. Naruto hesitated for a bit, likely trying to find the right words before he asked, "How do you know that jutsu?" Bora gave him a confused look. "What do you mean? Our dad taught it to us. You train with us like every week if we're not away on a mission." Naruto's face fell with what looked suspiciously like guilt. However, he was too tired to try and work that out and took the silence as a dismissal, making his way over to the spectators, most of which were eyeing him warily. Menma immediately jumped up and tackled him in a hug that he relaxed into with no hesitation. "You did it!" came the excited exclamation from the idiot. Bora drew back from the hug to level his twin with a flat look. "You thought I wouldn't?" His little SHT of a twin just grinned cheekily. "Well, you never know." After Sakura had confirmed that Sarada was alright and carried her away from the sparring area, Konohamaru called Menma and Boruto to the field. The black-haired male couldn't help the grin that stretched over his face. His twin would call him an idiot. This he knew, but he just couldn't suppress the excitement and anticipation flowing through his veins. They stood opposite each other, Konohamaru having already made his retreat to where the others were, Boruto scowling, Menma grinning. "Begin in 3, you're going down," spat Boruto. 2, we'll see, came the cheeky reply. 1, Menma placed the henge over his eyes. "Go." Boruto leaped back, 2 clones of himself popping into existence on either side of him as Menma activated his Sharingan. The 2 clones channeled some of the air into their palms and used it to propel the real Boruto towards Menma at incredible speed. But Menma had the Sharingan and was able to track the movement and prepare for the kick hurtling towards his head. The Uchimaki ducked the attack and grabbed Boruto's ankle as he was flying past and flung him back towards his clones, which poofed out of existence upon impact. Boruto rolled, making sure that the landing didn't hurt him too much, before rising into a crouch. His hands flew through a sequence of hand signs that were all too familiar to Menma. Was it a bit unfair that Menma already knew Boruto's fighting style like the back of his hand? Perhaps. Menma almost lazily lifted his head to see the sky. As expected, he watched as Boruto's chakra formed into droplets around the size of his hand. The droplets turned sharp before falling towards Menma. The Uchimaki considered evaporating the droplets with the fireball jutsu, but doing a jutsu that was basically exclusive to the Uchiha clan probably wasn't the best way to keep a low profile. Bora would definitely call him an idiot then. Thus, the black-hair male did a couple hand signs, put his hands on the ground and used his chakra to make a roof out of earth, being careful to always keep an eye on his opponent, even as he felt the droplets pelting his. Genius. Sasuke slapped his hand over Naruto's mouth, effectively shutting him up. "If you keep this up, you're going to wake the whole village." Naruto slapped away the hand and huffed but tried again regardless. "What I mean is, their behavior doesn't make sense. It feels like there is something missing, something that I'm not getting." "Are they acting suspicious?" The Uchiha prodded with a patient tone. The Uzumaki raked his hands through his hair. "Maybe. I can't tell if there is something there or if I'm just being paranoid." "So, do you want me to keep an eye on them?" Naruto looked at his rooftop companion with a defeated look. "Please. They're attending this sparring get-together with a few of our genin and I'm a little nervous that something could go wrong." Sasuke nodded. "All right." Silence enveloped the space around them. "What are they like?" Naruto's extensive training is the only reason that soft-spoken, sudden question didn't make him jump in fright. Turning towards the Uchiha, the blonde couldn't help the confusion and amusement that he knew was openly displayed on his face. "Are you getting soft on me, BSRD?" said BSRD scowled and whacked Naruto upside the head. "No. You've just gotten me curious." The blonde stared entranced at the light dusting of pink that tickled the other's cheeks, knowing already that he was defeated. He never could keep anything from Sasuke, all defenses and resolve crumbling at the slightest hint of vulnerability from the Uchiha. He had worked years to build the trust that they now shared. He would do anything to maintain, even strengthen it. There, the blonde pretended not to notice the way the raven's attention was instantly focused on him. Perfect. Sasuke's eyes scrunched a bit at the edges, a clear sign of his surprise despite his face staying carefully blank. "What?" Naruto took a minute to gather his thoughts before trying to continue. "They are polite, kind, loyal to each other," the blonde inhaled, slow and calming, "and the home they described its dash." He abruptly stopped, hesitating. The Uchiha scooted a bit closer and nodded encouragingly, telegraphing as much patience and understanding as he could comfortably allow himself to show. It's everything I've ever wanted. The blonde got to his feet, suddenly alight with the urge to move around. He started pacing back and forth on the rooftop, quickly descending into a rant. Their family is big. Not only that, but the love that they all clearly have for each other. My kids have never looked at me with the same adoration that these kids had for the other me. They've created the perfect home. An untouchable place of trust and acceptance, and I have never been able to do that. By the end he was crying. Not the crying that came with ugly sobs and uncontrollable wailing. It was the gentle caress of molten failure tiptoeing down his cheeks in sheer despair and hopelessness. Naruto couldn't see past the tears swimming in his vision, so when a hand softly stroked across his cheeks, catching the tears, he was caught off guard. When he realized it was just Sasuke, however, he melted into the touch, pressing his cheek lightly into the other's palm, determined to soak up as much comfort as he could. Sasuke was looking at him with an extraordinarily rare softness. Gone was the usual steel that everyone had accepted the Uchiha to be after the massacre. This was a side of the Raven that remained the kind, passionate child that was buried under all those impenetrable barriers, determined to never get hurt ever again. Naruto was well aware that he was the only one alive to know that this side of Sasuke existed, and it only made him melt further into the comfort of the man who loved him enough to lay himself bare in front of him. "Naruto, that isn't your fault, the Raven started but was immediately cut off. "But it is," the blonde retorted, barely able to stop himself from yelling. He was breathing heavily like he had just run a marathon and couldn't shove his suffering back into that godforsaken box in the back of his mind. "I thought that it was just impossible to be fully present as a father while being the Hokage, but the other me has proven me completely wrong. And I feel so guilty because I don't know how to be there for my family in the way that they deserve while still keeping this village afloat. What am I doing wrong that he's doing right?" Naruto was now barely breathing, teetering on the edge of a panic attack and beginning to lose track of his bearings. He felt his hands slowly steered him near to where this interaction had started, gently coaxing him to sit, then maneuvering him so that he was laying propped up against the chest, heart beating soothingly against his ear, hands lightly scratching through his hair. As his breathing began to slow again, he found himself snaking his arms around Sasuke's torso and hugging him tightly. "Are you feeling calmer?" The question was barely above a whisper. Naruto nodded, scared to breaking the bubble of serenity that had formed around the two. "Are you ready to let me speak?" Another nod paired with a small sniff. "Okay. First of all, we have no idea about how things work over there, and we have no idea what the other you is or isn't doing. You can't possibly know that he's taking on every responsibility that you are. You can't compare yourself to someone you know nothing about." The Raven continued to card his fingers through Naruto's hair, allowing silence to stretch for a few seconds, giving the blonde a chance to digest his first point before diving into the next one. "Secondly, you're not nearly as bad of a person as you're portraying yourself to be. You are exceptionally kind-hearted, passionate, and insightful. You are the best Hokage this village has ever had. We are living in a time of peace and prosperity because of you. The world didn't end in the Fourth Shinobi War because of you. I know I'm a good Hokage, it's the only thing people see these days when they look at me. But what about as a father? I noticed you didn't mention that." The Uchiha paused before hesitantly opening his mouth and answering that unasked question. "Am I a good father?" It's hard to define what a good father is, mostly because everyone has a different meaning of the word. To some, it's the person who loved and supported them to the best of their ability. Others see their father as the person who caused them more pain than anyone else. You would be closer to your children if being the Hokage wasn't so demanding, but that doesn't mean that you've completely failed them. You have shown them love and kindness every time you saw them, kept a roof over their heads, and always remained patient and understanding, even when Boruto would yell at you. Naruto was now looking up at the Raven, a fragile kind of hope twinkling in his eyes. "You did everything you could for them, that is something I believe you should be proud of." Naruto felt a new wave of tears overwhelm him and he buried his head in Sasuke's chest, the latter only holding him until he stopped shaking, the muscles in his body going limp in exhaustion. "SS. Chin. Thank you." They stayed in each other's embrace for another hour, both wanting nothing more than for this moment to last forever. And that's where we'll close the book for today, but the adventure is far from over. If this story spoke to you, hit that subscribe button and become part of our Animeverse. Like, comment, and share to help this new channel grow. Every bit of support makes a big difference. Drop your thoughts or the next fanfic you'd love to hear in the comments, and share this with a friend who loves anime stories just like you. Until the next chapter, keep your imagination alive. That's where I sign off. May you enjoy every moment of the gameplay that follows, straight from my hands to your screen.
Your middle tower is under attack. Your middle tower has fallen. Your middle barracks are under attack. Dire structures are fortified.
I cut a path. I go. I make my move. What is this? Exaltation. Yes. Silently. I cut a path. Step ahead. Not a whisper. Yes. Silently. Killing spree. Yes. I go. With quickness.
The enemy's top tower has fallen.
I cut a path.
Your bottom tower is under attack.
I make my move.
Your bottom tower is under attack. Your bottom tower has fallen.
With
Your bottom
quickness.
tower is under attack. Your bottom tower has fallen.
Yes.
Your bottom barracks are under attack.
Yes.
Your middle tower is under attack. Your middle barracks has fallen. Your middle barracks has fallen. Your middle tower has fallen. Your middle tower is under attack. Your middle tower has fallen. Your ancient is under attack. Dire structures are fortified. Your ancient is under attack. Your ancient is under attack. Radiant